In this video, we're going to be doing a lore deep dive into the Daedric prince Malacath and his disturbing creation. And boy oh boy, is it disturbing. Malacath isn't a OG Daedra. We have the story of his creation by another Daedra, Boethia. But Malacath is the prince of lies, deception, and hypocrisy, the god of curses, Lord of Ash and Bone, Lord of Monsters, Oath Breakers, Creator of Curses, he who speaks sideways. He seems to be directly the god for the orcs, the ogres, and the goblins. Basically, the ugly, gross, kind of almost monster-esque humanoids of Tamriel is sort of his patronage. But he does specifically have the patronage of the spurned and the ostracized. And that is a good way of describing most of those types of peoples, the goblins, the ogres, and specifically the orcs, because the orcs, for the most part, don't necessarily really have a homeland. They have Orsinium, which is a city that they got at the end of Daggerfall. But before that, they had no actual homeland. They were sort of a people without a land. And even then, Orsinium is not very large. And before we go really deep into the weird and disturbing creation of Malacath, it would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way to helping me make more of this content. Thank you. So Malacath wasn't always a Daedra. He was once known as Trinimac, a god to the Aldmer. And the Aldmer being the original elves on Tamriel before they all split into all the different offshoots of elves that you see in modern day Tamriel. Trinimac was sort of a hero. He's considered a god slash kind of demigod-esque character in sort of the Aldmer pantheon. He is sort of known as the greatest champion of Akatosh, the Dragon of Time. And to the Aldmer and the Altmer, Akatosh is numero uno in the pantheon of gods, so obviously the champion of Akatosh obviously matters a lot. And Trinimac was always sort of known as being sort of this high, upstanding character, champion, sort of the goody two-shoes character in the sort of history of the cosmology of the Altmer and the Aldmer. So back in the days of the Aldmer, a specific Aldmer, Veloth, began to follow the Daedric prince Boethia because Boethia promises Veloth and his followers the possibility of attaining immortality and godhood. And so as Veloth and Boethia are beginning this following, Trinimac and his followers come into conflict with Boethia and Veloth. That is then illustrated to us in the book from Elder Scrolls Online, The Fall of Trinimac. To truly know Malak, or Malacath, we must recall the story of Trinimac's fall from grace, and the events leading up to his torturous dishonor. During the Merithic era, a cult of Aldmeri dissidents abandoned the commonly accepted worship of Somerset Isle and began following a young prophet Veloth. Boethia had been speaking to Veloth in dreams and visions, guiding him to lead a new sect of Aldmeri with the belief that mortals could ascend to become gods. Trinimac's priests condemned the new sect for blasphemy and threatened exile, should they not abandon Veloth. When the priests were to pass judgment, Boethia appeared having swallowed a Trinimac and revealed the lies of Trinimac's teachings with Trinimac's own voice. Content, the priests were shamed and broken from his revelation. Boethia relieved himself of Trinimac in front of the assembly to complete his shame. So basically, Boethia shat out Trinimac. We know not how Trinimac had been defeated, but it is said that after his defeat, Boethia had consumed him and tortured his spirit in her belly. When Boethia grew bored of Trinimac's torture, she released him from his prison and later exiled him to a plain of choking ash. This torture and dishonor left Trinimac twisted and enraged. Trinimac faded and was reborn as Malak, or Malacath, the god of curses, with his mind bent on revenge. His most devout followers changed to match him and became the Orsimer, cursed to wander in exile, a people without a place. So basically, in the defeat of Trinimac, Boethia ate him and then eventually used him as like a little sock puppet, basically, stuck his hand up his ass, and sort of revealed to everyone the truth of everything, and then when he was done with him, shat him out. And let's just say things are going to get a little bit more graphic as we go along in this story. But this book specifically doesn't detail how Trinamac was defeated by Boethia. But fortunately, in the book The Lord of Souls, we learn specifically the story of how Trinamac is defeated by Boethia. And it is during when, in the book, Mead is in a Daedric plain, not sure where he is. He's actually in the ash pits of Malacath and talking to Malacath, but he just doesn't know it and is telling a story, basically. In the bygone by, he began, there was a hero named Trinamac, the greatest knight of the El Nofe, champion of the Dragon of Time. One day he betook himself to seek out Boethia, the Daedra prince, and chastise him for his misdeeds. But Boethia knew Trinamac was coming, and he put on the appearance of an old woman and stood beside the trail. "Good day, old woman," Trinamac said when he came along. "I'm in search of Prince Boethia to chastise him. Can you tell me where I might find the scoundrel?" "I know not," the old woman told him, "but down the road is my younger brother, and he might know. I'll gladly tell you where he is, if you will but scratch my back." Trinamac agreed, but when he saw her back, it was covered in loathsome boils. Nevertheless, having said he would, he scratched the noisome sores. "Thank you," she said. "You'll find my brother on the road to your left at the next crossroads." Trinamac went on his way. Boethia scurried ahead by a shortcut and put on the appearance of an old man. "Good day, old man," Trinamac said on meeting him. "I saw your elder sister, and she said you might know the path to Prince Boethia's house." "I do not," the old man said, "but my little sister knows. I'll tell you where to find her if you will only wash my feet." Trinamac agreed, but found the old man's feet even more disgusting and smelly than the old woman's back. Still, he had made a bargain. The old man told him where to find the younger sister, and again Trinamac went on. And again Boethia went ahead and put on the guise of a beautiful young woman. Now, Trinamac was dreading the meeting with the younger sister, fearing he would have to wash or scratch something even worse than he had already had. But when he saw the beautiful girl, he felt better. "I met your elder brother," he said, "and he told me you would know the way to the house of Prince Boethia." "Indeed I do," she declared, "and I will gladly tell you if you will but give me a kiss." "That I can do," Trinamac said. But as he leaned forward to kiss her, her mouth opened wide, so wide that his whole head went in, and Boethia swallowed him in a single gulp. Then Boethia took on Trinamac's form, and made him burp and fart and say foolish things, until finally he squeezed out a great pile of dung, and that what was left of Trinamac. The dung got up and skulked away in shame, a proud knight no longer. He became Prince Malacath, and all of those who loved him changed as well and became the Orcs. So, we get an even more disturbing recount of how Trinamac's fall from grace of a noble knight to now being eaten by a Daedra prince, shat out, and then becoming a Daedric prince himself. And yeah, let's just say things didn't go so great for him. And basically, Boethia took control of Trinamac with eating him. Obviously, this is sort of a legend story, so it doesn't necessarily have to make 100% sense. I guess after eating him, he is then able to speak like Trinamac and is able to then talk to Trinamac's followers and sort of expose the lies of Trinamac. And this is sort of explained to us in the book from Morrowind, The Changed Ones. Of all the Et'ada who wandered Nirn, Trinamac was the strongest. He, for a very long time, fooled the Aldemiri into thinking that tears were the best response to the sundering. They cried and shamed our ancestors, especially the feminine Altmer. They even took the missing god's name in vain, which is Lorcan, calling his narratives into question. So one day Boethia, prince of plots, precocious youth, tricked Trinamac to go into his mouth. Boethia talked like Trinamac for a while, and then gathered enough people to listen to him. Boethia showed them the lies of the Et'ada, the Daedra, and told them Trinamac was the biggest liar of all, saying all this with Trinamac's voice. Boethia told the mass before him the triangled truth. He showed them with Mephala the rules of Psijic endeavor. He taught them how to build houses and what items they needed to bury in the corners. He demonstrated the right way to wear their skin. He performed the way to walk to achieve an exodus. Then Boethia relieved himself of Trinamac, right there on the ground before them, to prove all the things he said were truth. It was easy then, for his new people became the Changed Ones. In this story, the Changed Ones are the followers of Veloth, who were already trying to leave the following of the Daedra to sort of follow a more ancestor, Daedric worship-driven life or culture, basically. And they become the Changed Ones, or better known as the Chimer. And then, as sort of the story of Morrowind progresses, the Chimer, with the Battle of the Red Mountain, become the Dunmer because of their curse. But they also get sort of their basic culture of worshipping ancestors and Boethia, Mephala, and Azura, the good Daedra, quote-unquote. And so, I think at this point, relieved is quite literal. And we have another detail of what happens after Boethia is relieved of Trinamac in the book The Anticipations. And let's just say, it gets really disturbing. Boethia was the ancestor who illuminated the elves ages ago before the Mythic Era. He told them the truth of Lorkhan's test and defeated Auriel's champion, Trinamac. Boethia ate Trinamac and voided him. The followers of Boethia and Trinamac rubbed the soil of Trinamac upon themselves and changed their skins. So, not only are we now in the part of the Elder Scrolls lore where a Daedra eats a god and then shits out another Daedra, we are now in the part of the Elder Scrolls lore where that said shit then gets rubbed onto the skin of the followers of Trinamac and the followers of Boethia to change their skin so that they become a different race of Mer, basically. Things are getting a little wild right now. And the even weirder part is the fact that same shit, different effect, I guess? I mean, because the followers of Boethia and Veloth, their skin becomes more bronze, and they become the Chimer, who then go north to Morrowind. The followers of Trinamac, I guess maybe because their love of Trinamac is more intense, they rub the shit on themselves, and they become the Orcs. So they have a much more dramatic transformation. Same shit, different effect. I don't know. Once again, I guess this is the magic of the story. Didn't know these little details mattered so much, but I guess they do. And so this is sort of the story of how the Chimer and the Orcs are created. Their sort of exodus from the Somerset Isles, and sort of the beginning of the splintering of all the different Mer or elves on Tamriel. But as we know, Trinamac was not just destroyed when he was eaten by Boethia and then shit out. Apparently he was tortured and banished, and where he was banished to is what becomes Malacath's Daedric Plane of Oblivion, the Ash Pits. And I guess it is there, as a sulking away as a pile of dung, he reforms himself into Malacath, the Daedric Prince, and he basically becomes, at that point, the head god of the Orcs' worship. And we learn more about the Orcs in the book Orcs and Afterlife, which is a book from Elder Scrolls Online. I have never found it difficult to get an Orc to talk about his or her beliefs when it comes to religion and the afterlife, as each Orc clan and stronghold has a rich and vibrant oral tradition. This should come as no surprise. What did surprise me was how hard it was to form a coherent picture, as no two oral traditions agreed on even the most basic of concepts. In this time of conflicting faiths vying for the Orcish soul, I found many of the tales I heard to be both extremely moving and extremely disturbing at the same time. Furthermore, I have been unable to locate a single tome related to the topic, or find a reference in any other books on related subjects. The only way to learn about the Orcish concept of life after death or a place of reward or punishment in a world beyond was by asking the right questions and listening to the various oral traditions. For after much research and countless interviews, I finally uncovered the Orc equivalent to the tales of the Far Shores and Sovngarde. Indeed, it was the only thing that the various oral traditions seemed to agree upon. and through them I have discovered the Ashen Forge. For the orcs that revere Malacath, the afterlife promises rewards of immortality, abundant food and drink, and constant battle deep within the Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge represents the culmination of 3 constant truths of life among the orc clans: the Stronghold, the Grudge, and the Code of Malacath. Let me explain each of these concepts and discuss how they relate to the orc afterlife, so that the meaning becomes clear, or at least as clear as each different stronghold attempts to make it. What follows is my best attempt to merge the divergent and sometimes conflicting tales into a single narrative. The Ashen Forge sits at the center of Malacath's own stronghold in the Ash Pit. According to some scholars, Malacath's plane of oblivion consists of nothing but dust, smoke, and ash. But his followers believe that the eternal emptiness contains all the things they hold dear and deem necessary to enhance their immortal existence. As the ultimate expression of the orc stronghold, Malacath's Ash Pit bastion stretches endlessly across the plains, extending even behind the stars to Aetherius, granting access to every worthy orc who crosses from this life into the next. In Malacath's stronghold, every orc is a chief. Every chief has 1,000 wives, and every wife has 1,000 slaves to cater to their every need. The stronghold's walls rise 100 feet into the smoky sky, constructed of polished steel and worked iron. Inside the walls, stone keeps iron towers and massive longhouses surround the center square that houses the Ashen Forge. The Ashen Forge fills the endless space within Malacath's smithy, a massive hearth that burns with a fire said to be hotter than the sun. The thing that keeps this fire alive is the adherence by the orcs of Tamriel to the Code of Malacath, but more on that later. Within this fire, every orc must undergo the ritual of tempering when they first cross. Within this fire, every orc must undergo the ritual of tempering when first they cross from this life to the next. They are thrust into the coals so that every grudge that he or she carried into the afterlife can be heated, melted, and eventually forged into the next generation of mortal orcs. With the grudges of Tamriel tempered and returned to the mortal world, the immortal orcs are now free to begin collecting a new set of grudges related to their new existence. Some particularly memorable grudges can also be hammered and worked into weapons or armor of legendary stature upon the Ashen Anvil, the gigantic workbench that stands beside the Ashen Forge. The heat that fires the Ashen Forge comes from the burning white-hot coals that are, according to the orc lore masters who would talk to me, the literal manifestation of the bloody Code of Malacath. They believe that the Code fuels the fires of emptiness, betrayal, and broken promises, imbuing every newly forged orc with a foundation of grievances and resentments that will take them far into the mortal world. The hope is that every generation will be better than the next to the efforts of the generation before, and its ability to adhere to follow the Code of Malacath. Still, faithful believe that they will be rewarded with immortality, nourishment, and constant battle deep within the Ashen Forge. A life everlasting filled with endless days of warfare, endless nights of fine food and drink, and ongoing opportunities to prove their toughness and demonstrate their quality of steel. Fascinating, really, especially when contrasted against the beliefs of Trinimac's followers, unlike the oral traditions of Malacath that twist and grow with each telling at every different stronghold. The traditions of Trinimac's faith was surprisingly consistent, and they were happy to share with me. High Priestess Solgar especially was extremely helpful in the preparation of this report. When a follower of Trinimac dies, she explained, he or she ascends to Aetherius to join with their ancestors. It seems like that the afterlife of Trinimac's faithful also consists of endless war and celebrations, but with a greater emphasis on once again spending time with family members who came before. In the end, I guess I found the Trinimac version to be somewhat tame when compared to the more savage and visceral beliefs of Malacath's faith. So basically, these people, the peoples of the orcs, just hold grudges, basically. They don't forgive and forget. They're kind of like the Larry Davids of Tamriel, it seems like. But now that we understand sort of the creation of Malacath, we can go over some of the more recent things of note about Malacath. Malacath is mentioned in The Varieties of Faith, a book from Morrowind, and it describes how an orcish god, Malak, troubled the heirs of King Harald for a long time, fled east after his defeat at the Battle of Dragonwall, the First Era 660. His rage was said to fill the sky with his sulfurous hatred, later called the Year of Winter in Summer. So, it seems like at some point Malacath had sort of a physical embodiment in the world, it seems like, and had a conflict with the Nords, which is not too surprising. But we then see Malacath again in the second era in ESO, where there's a quest where Malacath helps an orc woman get revenge on another orc for killing her husband. And even though the murderer that Malacath helps get revenge on is an orc, and he killed a non-orc, Malacath still helps get the revenge, which shows that Malacath sort of follows principles or rules rather than showing favoritism to his people, the orcs, basically. Then we go to the third era, and the first official in-video game appearance of Malacath is in Daggerfall as one of the Daedric princes that we can meet and do a quest for. And basically Malacath asks the agent to kill a seducer who scorned Malacath after giving her some good looks. So basically Malacath sends us on a pretty simple mission to go kill the seducer. Doing so, we then are rewarded with the hammer Voldenrung, which we will see again. And so it always seems like Malacath does have some favoritism for orcs, or at least cares about them, which is rare because it seems like no one else cares about orcs. And Malacath asks in Morrowind, the Neverine, to kill the descendant of a dark elf who took all of the credit from an orc. By killing the dark elf's descendant, we are rewarded with the helmet of the dark elf hero.
You have summoned me? Humph! You are all the same, but perhaps you can be of use to me. I have in my possession the helm of Orion Bearclaw, the dark elven hero. His deeds are numerous, but he was a false hero. All were performed by Karak Brokar, his orcish friend. It is time this legend was put to rest. Find the last of his bloodline, kill him, and I will grant you the helm. Look for him in the city where the man-god lives.
We see this helmet later from another descendant, again in Oblivion, during the Fighters Guild quest. Then we have another quest in Oblivion for Malacath, where the Malacath asks the hero of Kvatch to free his ogre little brothers from Lord Drad and a dark elf who has enslaved them.
You brought a present? Good. That's smart. You want something? And if you're smart, you do what I tell you. Lord Drad took my ogres, says he owns them. Lying maggot! They're my ogres! Lord Drad put my little brothers in chains, working in the mines. I don't like that. Get over to Lord Drad's estate. Let my ogres loose and get them out. Okay, get going!
Malacath and the Dark Elves don't seem to like each other too much, which makes sense since they do worship Boethia, and Boethia is the one who ate Trinimac and turned him into Malacath, and I would assume Malacath is probably not too happy about that. And then we then get to see Malacath again at the beginning of the Fourth Era in the book Lord of Souls, where we get to hear the more detailed story of how Malacath came to be, but also he helps Prince Artibris Mead and Sol fight Umbriel. And then finally, our most recent history on Malacath is in Skyrim as the last Dragonborn, where we come upon an orcish stronghold in southern Skyrim, and they have been cursed by Malacath because their leader is too weak, and then you go on a quest to help prove the worthiness of the chief, and it's somewhat irrelevant whether or not the chief survives or not, having to kill a giant. I'd say probably most times the chieftain dies, and then they assign a new chief, but you are still sort of a champion of Malacath, and you get Voldring again.
Was a fool, always trying to scheme his way out of responsibility. But you took care of him and the giants. 2 problems solved at once. Now, take Shagrel's hammer back to Larnishburg. and we'll see about whipping the rest of them into shape.
And this is a character that I'm really actually looking forward to for Elder Scrolls 6, because if Elder Scrolls 6, which it seems like it is going to take place in Hammerfell, I'm really excited to see what they do with Malacath, because Hammerfell is very close to Orsinium, and so therefore there should be a fair amount of orc history, orc culture sort of around what's going on in Hammerfell. And so it should be really interesting to see what they choose to do with Malacath in that setting. Thanks for going with me on this deep lore dive on Malacath and his creation by being eaten and shitted out by another Daedra. It would mean a lot if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel, and consider becoming a channel member to help support making this content. Thank you.